We were just talking. We got Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute, talking about the game last night. Rhino, Ole Miss State ended in dramatic fashion with a walk-off dinger. Mississippi State will advance. Ole Miss's season, I think, is over. We had, of course, Brian Haydad on yesterday. The Sports Talk boys are covering the tournament live on site there at the Hoover Met. So,
wasn't it kind of Ole Miss really didn't have a whole lot to play for? Like, they'd have had to won the whole thing to keep going.
That was Brian's theory.
Whereas they could play spoiler for State and throw a wrench in.
That's right.
Moving along.
Because they got to win a little bit. Of course, Patrick's a State fan, and he was asking me if I saw the game. I actually fell asleep before the end of the game and then awakened to check out what happened. And, of course, that was met with some disappointment. Got folks already rubbing in here. Jerry in Pontotoc says, "Hey, Gerard, how about them dogs?" Of course, having a little fun. But the tournament continues. All right, Patrick, thanks for coming in.
Sure. Well, I think anytime those two teams play, there's a lot to play for.
No, there's no doubt. Yeah. So I'm still upset about the double first base bag. You seen that? Do you know that, Rhino? It's like softball. Now, I saw a report about it the day before yesterday and thought, surely this can't be true. And then I kept seeing more information about it. So I asked Haydad while I had him on the show yesterday, said, "I'm looking at it right now." That's not baseball. Sorry. I don't like that. I get the purpose, but I think we could have kept it the way it is. All right, Patrick, let's. We were just chatting about energy and meeting our future energy needs. You and I were just at a Madison County Business League and Foundation meeting this morning where our legislative delegation for Madison County gave us an update on the 2024 session. Of course, a big part of that was the extraordinary session where the legislature approved a package for Amazon Web Services locating on 2 sites in Madison County. And, of course, their consumption of power is considerable, as is the case with all data center operations. The question is, how are we going to meet these future needs of power consumption with this explosion of data center building?
Yeah, just in the last 2 years in our country and really globally, demand for electricity is skyrocketing. You know, consumer habits are changing. A lot of people don't think about it, but our data-driven lifestyles is creating so much demand for these new data centers. And so energy was a big reason, electricity namely was a big reason why Mississippi was able to win this project. You know, there was some smart steps that the state leadership took, MDA working with the legislature and the Public Service Commission. The normal time it takes to permit power generation facilities is just too long to accommodate the technology business. And so they were able to come up with a process to streamline that and still protect the ratepayers. I live in Madison County, so we're all consumers on that system, but this is going to be an example where just basic economies of scale. You add a massive constant user of electricity into the system, and it's better for everybody else.
Yeah, speed to market was critical when energy was able to satisfy AWS's requirements and also show them that they could accommodate their power needs within the time frame that they sought for this project. And that was a major component of the competition with the other sites and other states to land this huge project from AWS. And, of course, they're doing this across not just the country but the world, as are the other major data center operators as well, Microsoft, Google, Apple, et cetera. And there's Equinix, Peak 10. There's other just dedicated data realty, other just dedicated facilities, data center facilities. Folks are concerned. How are we going to be able to accommodate this increased demand, this explosion of demand from data centers, and also service our normal everyday needs?
Well, it's a huge opportunity. I think the scale of it is almost incomprehensible. But I think with what's happening, there's parts of the East Coast of the U.S. Where you're reading more and more news articles about concerns over power shortages.
Yeah.
And so they're turning away these kind of projects,
right.
Which is more of an opportunity for Mississippi, as long as we maintain the ability to build, to add infrastructure quickly, to add capacity, which I think we can as a small state. That's one of our strengths, is being nimble and agile and moving. And so I think 10 years from now we'll look back and this really will be a transformational, and energy being such a big driver of it.
So we were talking offline before we got started about how small modular reactors, nuclear reactors, may play a role in our future energy needs. Where do you see that going?
Well, I heard you guys talking about gasoline prices, and the Biden administration. I think the way you would sum up what's going on is just a massive failure in energy policy. And there's so many aspects to energy. Of course, we have transportation fuels and electricity and heating fuels. And as we're talking about with demand going in the direction we need to be building more of everything. It's just that's what the equation requires. And in the nuclear power sector, there's so much talk about carbon reductions and goals to reduce electricity-related carbon dioxide emissions. Well, nuclear is one big obvious solution to that. But as a country, we're losing. We're on the a downtrend in nuclear power production. So a few years ago, we had 104 reactors in the country. Now we have somewhere around 95.
Just shutting them down?
Well, these are old plants that are scheduled to retire. Grand Gulf over here in Mississippi, one of our low-cost generation assets in Mississippi, scheduled to retire in 2044. And so that sounds like a long way off, but 20 years in nuclear construction and planning and financing is a really short period of time. And so, when you get down, concerns about gasoline prices, concerns about carbon dioxide emissions, they have a weird way of showing their concerns, and so, that the answer to providing more nuclear power generation and more carbon-free generation is to build more carbon-free generation, more nuclear, and so we're not seeing a whole lot of activity there, and it's complicated. But we're not getting clear signals from the federal government that that's an area of energy, of U.S. energy, that we want to expand.
So it seems like we're sort of shutting down the carbon-emitting energy generation and reducing that footprint without commensurately replacing it with carbon-free generation.
Well,
is that true?
There's been a lot of, in capacity terms, a lot of wind and solar added across the country.
Okay.
Nuclear's on the way down, coal's on the way down, natural gas is on the way up, but natural gas is not replacing that lost generation as fast as, and so that's what's creating the problems with short. What you got a combination of decreased supply and increased demand from the lifestyle changes, and so the right kind of energy policy is the one that encourages more production and more construction of all of these things, not just picking a few. And so in Mississippi, the vast majority of our generation is natural gas. And natural gas is at historically low prices, and so we're enjoying low, even though prices have gone up, electricity prices here in the last few years, because just generally inflation, the price of everything's gone up. Gas-based generation is low cost. But what we know about natural gas is historically it's volatile. And so we can't expect it to stay low cost forever. That's why you need a diversity in the portfolio. Add a few renewables. Those are small sources of generation. But the big carbon-free generation, like nuclear, is something there needs to be a lot of attention dedicated to. And as you said, we just don't hear a lot of talk about it.
It just seems like that the Biden administration's policies are rooted in politics and not reality and not just pragmatic decision making.
Well, it's really amazing. It seems like they totally missed all the economics classes that
skipped out on that, huh?
Well, you remember in 22 when gasoline prices started to increase. Biden got out publicly and said, "I'm going to demand that those gas stations lower those prices."
Go out there and just change the pump.
Yeah, that's the way it works. Yeah.
Same thing we were talking about, this Target situation. Yeah, Target says they're lowering prices because we asked them to. No, that's not what's going on here. But do you think if Mr. Trump is able to win back the White House, I mean, his posture on energy is completely different, of course. Do you anticipate we'd see a series of executive orders upon him assuming the office that would essentially reverse a lot of that which Joe Biden implemented?
Well, for one, I think I think energy ought to be a bigger issue in this election than it is currently because there's so much distinction between the two candidates, and you got two full-term records to look at. And in Trump's case, I know people have strong feelings about him either way, but their energy policies are drastically different. Trump's is pro-U.S. production, and Biden's is more pro-scarcity.
Yeah. If you can hang around, we can continue the discussion.
Sure.
Yeah, we got Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. We're in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back. So Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute, is our guest. So, Patrick, we were just talking about the destructive policies out of the Biden administration, certainly as it pertains to energy. It is absolutely true that the White House likes to promote this narrative that it's true that we are producing more oil in this country than ever before, and certainly more than we were at the time he took over for President Trump. But you wonder where we would be if the trajectory had stayed in place that we were on at the point President Trump exited office and Joe Biden took over. I mean, so this, whatever it is, 13 million barrels a day, which is roughly 1 million barrels more than it was in 19, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. Where would we be had he just kept Mr. Trump's policies in place?
Well, it's hard to say, and I think the right view to take on this is the long view. Okay. And so what is in decline right now is activity on federal lands. So oil and gas production on federal lands, the part that the government actually controls.
Okay.
And so offshore production, there's out in the Gulf of Mexico and onshore lands like Wyoming and New Mexico and places like that. The Biden administration has been very, very transparent at keeping development and leasing activity at their words, historically low levels. And so I think what we're about to see over the next several years is a decline in energy production on federal lands. And so then we get, what we were talking about earlier, we get 5 or 8 years down the road and, things are costing more. Now we're not producing 13 million barrels a day anymore. Now we're down. Now imports are up. But we go to buy things, or we go to fill the gas tank up. What prices are okay right now, but 5 years from now, I think that's what I'm concerned about. People wake up and like, what happened? And the things that happened at that point would have happened. They're happening right now. And so I think what I'm afraid of is unless there's a change in the White House, that some of these actions and the damage is going to be irreversible.
Well, and I have this concern that, okay, let's say we do have a change and we get Mr. Trump in office and he's more friendly to fossil fuels and the fossil fuels energy and essentially kills a lot of those regulations that are in place now under the Biden watch that are hampering, I think, and impeding oil and gas production. And more importantly, not just the leases on public lands, but I got to believe the energy companies themselves are hesitant to make any long-term massive investments, knowing that it's a volatile situation. We could end up, again, in a period after Mr. Trump, we end up with another sort of green-friendly president again, and here comes the same series of regulations, and we're back where we were. I'm just not sure they're inclined to make these big investments that we need to sustain long-term growth of energy production.
Yeah, you're right. The investments these projects are extremely capital intensive. Yeah. And so you've got to have a long view on how you're going to earn an acceptable return on that investment and not be interfered with by the government. And I mean, it goes back we've got this very obsessive issue happening in Washington to do anything to harm the oil and gas business. We don't have that in the South. I think I heard you say that you got the Democrat Party leader or somebody coming in here shortly. We don't have that. I mean, I'm not defending Republicans or Democrats in Mississippi,
sure.
But what I'm saying is we've got pragmatic politicians in the South, and I think even most all Democrats in the South and Mississippi. The people that I deal with would openly agree like those are bad policies that are ultimately going to increase the price of goods and services and energy are bad policies for Mississippians. And so that's why I say I wish energy would become more of an issue in this election and elections, federal elections beyond, because it's such unfortunately, such a distinguishing issue among the two parties in D.C. right now.
Yeah, I think it's kind of party agnostic. I don't think people pull up to the gas pump and say, well, I'm okay with this high price of gas because I know that I'm doing my part for the climate. I just don't know that that's a very common sentiment out there. I think people are all saying, man, this is killing my household budget. That's what they're saying.
Right. And I think people are, again, going back to pragmatism, people say, okay, if we're concerned about carbon emissions, then there's some very obvious things that we should be doing that we're not. Building more nuclear plants, certainly not losing reactors. And if we know that the U.S. economy is more or less carbon intensive than the Chinese economy, for example, well, shouldn't we be trying to recruit all of that investment and production as much as we can here, as opposed to outsourcing it overseas, which is a result in emissions. So anyway, getting into another emissions-related topic, carbon capture and sequestration is something that that another issue that the Biden administration is slow walking, but an opportunity for Mississippi. Mississippi's had carbon-based oil production for over 2 decades now. In recent years, it's been responsible for about half of oil production in Mississippi, where we inject carbon in the ground and repressurize oil fields and get new life and production out of it. And so
some of those are abandoned wells, right? Previously.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, going into the future, it's on the horizon, and it may be the near-term horizon where there's real companies and investment looking to take industrial-based emissions and inject those in the ground. For people like you and me, it looks a lot like the oil and gas business. You drill a hole, and instead of taking something out, you're putting something in, and it ends up being low pressure. But it could be an economic opportunity, a great economic opportunity for Mississippi as it relates to industrial recruitment.
I got
you. So, not knowing exactly how that's going to look in the future, Mississippi's been laying the policy groundwork for that for years.
And is there not a fair amount of carbon capture technology that's in development? I mean, there's a fair amount of investment in that. Innovators that are working on, right?
A good bit. Billions of dollars out there. And I think what we would probably agree on is the market will develop solutions to that. And unfortunately, what's happening is you've got regulations coming out of out of EPA in Washington, for example, that's trying to speed up that process on the one hand by requiring power plants, for example, natural gas power plants or coal power plants have to have this emissions reductions technology by this date, and the technology is just not ready. It's just not absolutely proven. And so it's another example where we're getting a little out over our skis, and the people who are going to pay are me and you and all the people listening, and in the form of higher prices, because companies are going to have to comply with unreasonable regulations.
I think a lot of people are hungry for the $1.80 gas they remember during the Trump era. Do you have any thoughts about how plausible it is that we may return to that price point if Mr. Trump is reelected? I mean, just given the overall dynamics of the industry and the market, global market aspect of energy.
Well, I think it would be much more likely that would happen under Trump administration. I mean, the old call of drill, baby, drill, I think it's a lot more complex than that. I mean, for the reasons that you just brought up. Investment has to have confidence that it's going to earn a return, but also, the market's got to be right. And so, to get production up may require an increase in like take natural gas. There's not a lot of exploration in Mississippi just because of where prices are.
We also have to consider, do we not, that as long as we're out there paying the price we are now, and it's not really having a marked decrease on consumption, that's what it's going to be sold for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it works. So we're all complaining about it, but we're still paying for it at that level.
In simple terms, the best policy is just to simply have a policy where the market can react when the market demands. And honestly, I don't know if we'll ever get back to that.
I agree.
For the reasons that you brought up, we've got these political cycles. So we know the next president, whoever's elected, is only going to be in office for 4 years.
Right.
So if it's Trump, I think the question is, he's going to have pro-energy policies, but is there going to be enough certainty?
It's 4 years, though, and these are 10, 15-year investments these energy companies are considering when they think about that. I think it's the CEO of Exxon a couple of years ago said, as I recall, we will never build another refinery in this country. He just didn't see a point at which, and those are the sorts of guys that build big refineries, which are multi-billion-dollar CapEx projects. He didn't think we'd ever have another one in this country.
Which means that we'll be importing gasoline forever.
We send some of ours right overseas to be refined. They send it over here back as gas.
That's right. That's right.
And I think that's an aspect of it that's not widely known. So when you think about the concept of energy independence, I think generally people think, okay, well, that means that they think of oil and gas more than anything else, and that means we're producing and refining enough oil and gas and finished goods, fuel products to satisfy our needs domestically. That's not really what energy independence means, though.
No, it means that we produce enough to meet our needs, but we also trade on the global market.
Right.
That's what it means to me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's amazing how politics has been injected into this subject so much, and I think you're right. If we could just get the government out and let the market take care of it, we'd all be better off.
Well, that's wishful thinking.
I'm going to keep wishing. Appreciate it, Patrick. Thanks for coming in. We're stepping aside for a break, coming right back in the Element Wealth Studio.